Hello and welcome to DJ Exotics. I'm David and this is Beth, one of our Royal Python females, and today we're going to be talking about the 5 questions you should be asking pet shop owners when you're buying your first pet reptile. But before we get started, a couple of bits of housekeeping. Number 1, we are animal led, so if Beth has had enough I will be putting her back. And number 2, please remember to like, share and comment on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much and let's get into it. So you're going into a pet shop, it's a very exciting time, and this can often be a problem because you get so caught up in the moment that you forget to ask important questions on how to care for the animal or history about the animal, which sometimes means that you're making a decision of purchasing an animal that hasn't maybe had the best care, or someone who doesn't really know what they're doing. Remember that who you buy for can actually determine the success of the reptile in your home. Not always the case. Remember that you do need to do your research and you do need to look after them properly, and we do have plenty of care videos. We've got a whole care sheet playlist up there, or you can go to our website and look at some of the care guides that we have on some of the most commonly kept pet reptiles. Now, like our Royal Pythons here, you can find many species at pet shops, normally a corn snake, ball python, leopard gecko, crested gecko and some other species. Now when you're there you need to ask about the care of the animal. So there are 5 questions which really you should be asking. The first one is, do they know the age of the reptile? Now this is very important because you want to know how old it is, especially when you're getting one that may be a little bit bigger. Now there are times when you don't know. The pet shop might not know because they've had one surrendered to them and they're trying to find it a new home, but they should be open and honest about this. And this is one of the other questions that you get. But they should be able to tell you the rough birth date of it. Now sometimes they get them from big breeders, wholesale breeders, such as Peregrine or others, and they haven't been given the information. In contrast, if you go to a breeder, they should actually have the exact date that they hatched or were born, and that can be very reassuring. I would always recommend going to a breeder rather than just a chain pet store. The second question you should talk about is their maintenance routine. So what we're talking about here is how often they're cleaned, how often they're given health checks, how often they're fed. So for Royal Pythons and other snakes, you're looking really for them to say about once a week. You should be able to say, when did they last feed? Now they should be able to answer this. I know, for instance, that all our snakes are fed on a Sunday, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 which are fed on a Saturday during our senior keeper experiences. Now you can sit there and say, oh, which ones haven't fed. I can tell you which ones haven't fed any week. Generally speaking, I'm going to touch wood here, that we actually have a 99% success rate. It is normally a snake that's in shed. Our babies normally feed every single week because babies are quite often just eat like crazy. It's all our corn snakes, so they tend not to miss a single meal. Royal Pythons tend to be a little bit different. Our hognoses last year ate every single meal. They didn't miss a single one before they went to new homes. So I can tell you that often I note when they've not fed, not when they have fed. But I can give you all that information, and a pet shop should be able to do exactly the same thing. Beth, where are you going? But also they should be able to give you other details like how often they're cleaning them out, how often they're handling, how often they are giving them a general health check over, checking for stuck shed and things like that. If they just go, oh, it's everyday care, that's a bit too generic. What does that mean? Does that mean that they're just looking in there, they're just changing the water? Does it mean that they're giving them a full clean out every single day? What does everyday care mean? Try to get some specifics. When do you give them a full clean? When are you giving them a spot clean? When are you changing their water? Also ask about the time of day. If they just, oh, just whenever we get round to it. It's not really setting up a really good routine for the animals. Now you don't have to replicate exactly the same routine when it comes to your gecko or new snake. You can create your own routine, but it's good to know that the snake has got a routine to begin with. So for instance, I'm in here every morning and I do the same routine. It's the same thing with food. All the snakes know I go in a certain pattern and they all expect it, and these Royal Pythons can be quite painful, that they actually will stop feeding if I go in the wrong. I've tried it, they've stopped feeding because I haven't done it in the right order. I've had another snake that's been pestering me and I've given in and I've gone to them first. It happens. And then these guys get a bit annoyed because they're not first fed and they will take a little bit longer to get feeding because they feel a bit upset, I guess. But that's the second question, is about the care routine. Now the third one is, who was the breeder? Now for breeders it's going to be obviously them, but you might be able to ask, what's the lineage, where has the parents come from, where have the grandparents come from, and that can be quite interesting. It's a bit more like a pedigree of a dog. You would expect to know who the parents are. Remember that by law, when you're buying a dog, you are entitled to see the dog with its mum, and preferably with the dad, but that doesn't always happen because you have the stud instances where the male is brought in just for one purpose and then goes to another home, but it should always be with the mum. And you won't see it with the parents for reptiles, but you could know who the parents are. So here we generally like to show who the dads are. We don't always show who the mums are because depending on the time of season, the mums could still have eggs in them or still be breeding. But we can tell you who they are and point out their enclosure, and we generally know who it all is. But there are times where we are able to show both the parents, and that can be quite important to see. And you can see the genetics and the healthiness of the parents as well. Also ask for any health concerns. So reptiles aren't very good at always showing health concerns. So snakes that are losing weight or not eating, or have had stuck sheds in the past. This is something that really should be passed on. According to the UK laws, the seller of a reptile is supposed to provide you with any information about any health concerns. So that is something to always ask. The next question is about the transport. What are you going to transport them in, and how long do they recommend, and any kind of conditions that they would consider important in transporting home. So for instance, with any reptile here, especially during winter, what I always recommend is that when taking it home is that you leave it in the transport box outside of the enclosure, maybe on top or next to it, for a good couple of hours to bring the reptile back up to room temperature. And this is important because one of the greatest risks to reptiles when they are moving home is thermal shock. So what happens is that one of these guys, it's not going to be one of these because she's a bit big, but a baby would be taken in the car maybe for an hour and a half, and then go straight from that. And in the winter it can be like 2-3 degrees outside, and getting them up, keeping them up to a high temperature isn't always possible in the car. So they go to that, and then you put them in a 30-degree vivarium. That's too much. That can cause thermal shock, and that can be painful for them. So the best thing to always ask what their recommendation is for getting them back into the enclosure. And also the recommendation for the first 48 hours. They might say, and this is one to watch out for, oh, it's fine, just go and hold it straight away, hold it tonight, you'll be fine. And what you're really looking for with a snake, you want to kind of leave it until its first feed. So with us, we always try to recommend handling maybe after the Sunday, though with some species like the corn snakes you can handle them before the first feed. And then you get the leopard geckos to leave them overnight, and then starting your routine the next day and start with that routine. The next thing is also to suggest what equipment they suggest, what have they been using. So things like the substrate for mealworms, the live food, whatever they've been using, what have they been using? Because the more that you can replicate what the snake has been used to or what the gecko has been used to, the easier it is going to be to settle. If you go straight into something brand new for it, it's going to take a little bit longer for that animal to get used to the new environment. It's much like a puppy. When you send a puppy home, and I use puppies quite a lot because geckos can act like puppies, so can some snakes. When you get them home for the first time, they are going to miss the environment that they were in, because that is something that they've got used to. They're in a whole new environment. With puppies, you can give them scents, so scent of the mum, scent of the old home, and that gives them a reassurance. And it's the same with reptiles. If you give them, say, similar plants or similar hides or similar feeding or water bowls, that is something that they will adapt to much quicker. They'll think, oh, it's just been moved here. And that's something that could be rather good for them. The other option is that if you know, so you're buying from a breeder and you know they're using a certain type of hide for that gecko, actually purchasing one of those hides, taking that hide with you. The next question that you should be asking is about the temperament of the animal. Has it had any reaction to anyone beforehand? And also, how long have they had the individuals? So from a breeder, they've had them all from hatching, but a snake that's in a general pet shop, maybe on a high street or local, may have only had it in for a couple of weeks. And that may mean that they don't know the individual. And you should be asking about the temperament of how it's been for a long time. So I know all the temperament of all the babies. I can tell you which ones are going to be a little bit more flighty, which ones are less eager to eat, which ones are more happy. I'm trying to keep her head in the camera. Which ones are going to be better. You know, if someone came in and said, I want a really nice calm gecko, I can point to 2 or 3 which are going to be perfect. If someone just says, oh, I want one which is going to be a bit lively and run around and engage with the environment, I can tell you which ones those are going to be. And that's the important thing, is that you'll want to try to find out how much they really know the individual, and that's something to consider. Another question that you really want to ask is about how long they reckon the snake or the gecko can live for. You're really looking to make sure that they know their stuff with the individual, and you can ask many questions along this line. So you could ask what's their diet in the wild, what the temperatures should be like, and things like that, and try to get as much information out of them. It's not always about what you don't know, it's about what they do know, because you want to make sure that you are buying from someone who has taken good care of the animal, but also knows their stuff, because you don't want to be buying for someone who has bad advice. So for instance, if you got someone who tried to sell you 2 geckos together, that's really not a good thing. They're really going for the money rather than for the care of the gecko. You're looking for someone who's going to say, no, if you want 2 geckos, you have to have 2 enclosures. Also the same thing with snakes. You know, if they say, oh yeah, you can keep snakes together, that's bad. Unless of course you've got a communal species such as the garter snakes. Most species of snakes should be kept individually, especially for beginners. Apart from that, that's really all the questions that you should be asking. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, share and comment. Let us know what questions you think you should be asking. Have I missed any out? Apart from that, also subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.